Hello everyone and welcome on my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about the best 10 Formula 1 driver of all time. I mean it's very hard to pick 10 drivers only. I've made a list. There are some more that I would like to add, but I wanted to stick with 10. As always, please give me your feedback, give me your ideas, your ranking, debate why or not I should have had some drivers or remove some drivers of that ranking. But here we go, top 10 drivers, Formula 1 drivers of all time. Before I go, I would like to say one thing. I've put 10, but I didn't list them in a ranking, right? So it's 10 drivers. Don't expect number 10 to be number 1, number 1 to be number 10. I just put them here on a list. So the first one I want to talk about, and it's because I share a little bit of history with him, is Niki Lauda. Obviously, Niki Lauda, a very impressive driver. I have a picture sign of him at home. He had a massive accident at the Nürburgring, got burned in his car. I did get burned in Bahrain, my accident, so obviously we share that. But huge respect for Niki as a driver, and then what he did with Mercedes Formula 1 team. Obviously, Niki had his big accident in '76. Only 6 weeks after his accident, he was back racing. I believe he was back racing in Monza. And when he removed his balaclava, there were blood from the injury. Finished vice world champion that year, was world champion the year after. Absolutely stunning to see that he kept racing and came back so early after his accident. And then, for me, Niki is that red hat all the time on creating Mercedes Formula 1, the most successful team of all time. Niki is 3-time world champion, 25 race win, one of the biggest mental strengths that I've seen in my career, and probably one of my favorite drivers of all time. Number 9, Sebastian Vettel, 4-time world champion, very impressive career. I remember watching Sebastian racing in Formula 3 when I was in Formula 1, and then I still remember watching his first Formula 1 race at the US GP when Robert Kubica couldn't race because of his accident in Canada, and honestly for a first race it was very, very impressive. He was part of the BMW junior program as well as Red Bull, so he drove for BMW in the US Grand Prix in Indianapolis, had a very good weekend, setting up into going to Toro Rosso, and then at Toro Rosso he won Monza under a very, very wet weekend. Obviously, the car was working very well. Sébastien Bourdais, the French driver, was with him at the front of the grid, but had an issue at the start. And just Sébastien flew on the race. He was just surfing the water. With Toro Rosso, then went to Red Bull for World Championship. I was lucky to fight for podiums and wins with him back in 2012 and 2013, and that was an amazing. Then Sebastian went to Ferrari a little bit later, and Ferrari was not at his best. He did fight. He gave Lewis Hamilton a tough time trying to win the championship against him. That was a pretty good battle to follow. For me, Sebastian is part of those top 10 drivers just because of what he achieved, so young, being so mature and so ready for Formula 1. Next on the list is Stirling Moss. Even though Stirling Moss was never world champion, he's got 16 wins and 24 podiums. He was overshadowed by Juan Manuel Fangio, and his nickname is the champion with no crown. Stirling Moss was an absolute incredible driver, so fast. Unlucky 4-time vice champion in 4 years in a row, 3 times behind Fangio. Such a gentleman. Even Mercedes released a car at his name, a car named after Stirling Moss. Yeah, just an incredible driver, but never was world champion. Next on the list is Jim Clark. Jim Clark is an absolute incredible driver. He's won 25 out of the 73 races he participated in, had to drop 28 times, was 2-time world champion in 1963 and 1965. He even went rallying, and actually was at the Great Britain Rally, and he was super competitive. He was fighting there with the best rally drivers until he drifted off the track. But that shows how much skill Jim Clark had. I mean, that record of 25 wins out of 73 races, that is absolutely incredible driver that liked to drive Formula 1 rally car. Unfortunately, during a Formula 2 race in 1968, he had an accident and passed away. But for me, I love the fact that he was driving wherever he could drive, and that's so cool to see. Next on the list is Jackie Stewart. Jackie is a Scottish driver, 3-time world champion, 27 wins, 43 podiums. He was one of the leaders of Formula 1 in the late 60s, early 70s. Once after the death of Jim Clark in 68, Jackie Stewart became the new British star of motorsport. Jackie Stewart raced 99 races, 43 podium, 27 win. He set a record that was then beaten by Alain Prost. But the crazy thing here is Jackie Stewart only raced 9 years in Formula One, was two-time world champion, two-time vice world champion. That is absolutely incredible. Talking to Jackie still nowadays, he's passionate about racing. He understands that racing, he always wears that Scottish trousers so you can see him from far. I was lucky to share some good experience with him. 2013 Malaysia on the grid. He came to me and he told me one thing. He said, slowly catch the monkey. And that meant just build your race and go for it at the end. I finished 6th that race. That worked. Jackie built his own team at the end of 1999. Stewart Racing. I don't know if you remember, it was a full white car with the Scottish flag on the side. I remember Barrichello was driving for them and can't remember who was. Alan McNish, I think, was there. Won one race in 99 and then that team became Jaguar and then became Red Bull. So also one of the most successful team in history was built by Jackie Stewart. He showed me some of the car. I went once to his property, showed me some of the car that he kept out there, and that was pretty special. Next on the list, just talk about it, Alain Prost, 4-time world champion, 51 wins, 106 podium, the most successful French driver. Obviously, I know Alain very well. He's got 199 races in Formula One, 106 podium, 51 wins. So very impressive stats. I started watching Alain in 93, 94. So I was young and Alain was fighting Ayrton Senna, obviously as a French driver. I was following Alain a lot, but Ayrton has something very unique. Ayrton was just Ayrton Senna. So it was hard to pick up one of the two to be my favorite. Alain was, very practical. The professor, that's his nickname, looking at all the elements and putting them together, whilst I believe Ayrton was just more feeling based onto it. And when they were teammates at McLaren, there was some far. One of the biggest rivalry of Formula One. It didn't go well all the time between Alain and Ayrton, but it was pretty cool to see them racing that hard. Suzuka when they crashed as teammate at McLaren, and the year after when they crashed again for the World Championship. It was two finishing that stayed in history. Alain then retired for a year, came back and won again. So very impressive career from Alain. Such an amazing driver to get the chance to know. Next, Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, one of the most successful driver, tie with Michael Schumacher. I won't go into the stats because Lewis is still racing. I believe he's still gonna win some races, but also a driver that I've got the chance to compete in. For me, one of the most impressive parts was Lewis when he came in 2007 with McLaren, teammate with Fernando Alonso, and everyone thought rightly so that Fernando was going, after being world champion with Renault, was going to be the one that was going to dominate the rookie. And straight away from the first start in Australia, you could see that Lewis was up there on the pace, being super, intelligent and fast, and almost was world champion there if it wasn't for a mistake in China at the pit entry, or some more. But obviously some other races where he could have scored points. But very, very impressive season. That year Kimi Räikkönen was world champion, and 2008 Lewis won his first world title, and then went to Mercedes when McLaren was still at the top. So everyone was thinking, why is he going to Mercedes and what's going to happen? And what a run at Mercedes. As I say, Mercedes Formula One is the most successful team in the history of Formula One. Lewis is the most successful driver with Michael Schumacher. He's got the opportunity to become the first 8-time world champion. It was very close in 2021. Can still debate that it should have happened. Very impressive to see that career. So definitely a huge champion there. So 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher, incredible driver. I grew up watching Michael and Ferrari. He joined the team when they weren't at their best, but with Jean Todt and Ross Brawn, they did manage to turn that around and be one of the most incredible team of the history. For me, Michael Schumacher, it's the battle with Juan Pablo Montoya and the one with Fernando Alonso. It was so cool to see. Obviously, pretty much every kid in the world grew up with a red car, and red means Ferrari. So those Ferrari were absolutely incredible. I also remember Mika Häkkinen and Schumacher. So yeah, it was Mika Häkkinen, Schumacher, and Montoya Schumacher, and Alonso Schumacher. I was lucky to race against Schumacher back in 2012. That was very special. Being on the same track as him and passing and being passed by Michael. That was very unique. Definitely something that I was lucky to have in my career. We have also to remember that before going to Ferrari, actually, Michael Schumacher went to Jordan And his first weekend was the Belgium Grand Prix. He was absolutely stunning there. And then with Benetton, he was two-time world champion already, fighting with Ayrton. So yeah, I mean, if you look at it, Schumacher was Ayrton, Hakkinen, Montoya, Alonso. Then I got the chance to race him. That's absolutely incredible to think of that. I'm not good at looking back and looking at those stats, but no, I know it because we're doing the video together, and I'm quite excited about it. No, obviously, Ayrton Senna, three-time world champion, 41 wins, 80 podiums, drove for pretty much 10 years, 84, 94. If you look at the history of Ayrton, him driving on the rain in Monaco with a car that wasn't the best and just flying and being so good, to almost lapping everyone in Monaco in the race and crashing at the end because he kind of lost the focus. Three-time world champion with McLaren, then went with Williams to win a fourth world title, and fourth race of the season is Imola 94, probably the worst weekend of F1 history, with Roland Ratzenberger dying on Saturday in qualifying, and Sunday 1st of May 94, Ayrton Senna passing away in the race. I was watching that race. I was only 8 years old, but I still remember watching the race. I still remember not understanding what was going on. I was with my dad on the sofa and I was watching and waiting and didn't know what was happening 28 years ago. I still remember what I was doing. For me, Ayrton was just absolutely incredible. He inspired so many drivers just by the way he raced, the way he was passionate about it. I love using his quote: if you're no longer for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver. I think that's something that I take from him, and I like that mentality that when you're out there and you're going for it. You know, you're not taking no for an answer. That's definitely something that Ayrton would do. For me, he's one of the best of all time. I wish I'd seen him more racing. I wish he was still here wearing his blue national hat and his yellow, green and blue helmet. He had the most pole position, 65 during 17 years, the record until Alain Prost took it. But he was just probably the fastest, or one of the fastest driver that ever raced car. Last on the list was one of the first world champion, Juan Manuel Fangio, Argentinian driver, 5-time world champion with 4 different teams: Alfa Romeo, Mercedes, Ferrari and Maserati when he was age 47. Obviously it was a different time in the 50s. It was 4 times in a row, 54 to 57, 24 victories in 51 races. That's almost 50% of the wins, and the rest of the time was pretty much second. So he's like the godfather of all the racing driver in the world. 5-time world champion in an area where it was just so dangerous, so unpredictable, so much different. But as one of the first world champion of Formula 1, 70 years later, we still remember Juan Manuel Fangio as the guy that started it all for us. Obviously, it's a bit older history, so I know it a little bit less, just because I wasn't kind of watching. But for me, he's on the list of the 10 guys that are up there. Absolutely stunning, absolutely impressive. Love the fact that he's the oldest world champion of all time at 47. Can you believe that? And almost a 50% rate of winning. Just absolutely amazing. There are more drivers that I like to put here. Fernando Alonso is one. I talked about it. I was lucky to be his teammate. Absolutely impressive. But Fernando is not done yet. It keeps going, and he goes like he's 20. There's Max Verstappen, but still same thing. Max Verstappen is only 24 years old, so I'm gonna give him a few more world championship, and then we add him in the list. Graham Hill is one too. Graham Hill was he's one of the only driver, if not the only driver. He's the only driver with the triple crown, meaning Monaco GP, 24 Hours of Le Mans, and Indy 500. A lot of drivers tried those triple crown, but only Graham Hill was able to get it. So yeah, that list gonna probably evolved. It's just gonna get bigger because it's impossible with the time to keep to 10. But we'll do a new one in some time. So please, as always, make sure that you like, you subscribe, you give me a comment, you give me your list, why, the pro and the cons. Who maybe should have had or removed. I don't think there's any to remove, but let me know if there are any. But who we should add. And I'll see you very soon for a new video.